How you doing, everybody? It's Friday afternoon. It's around 3 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon. It's the 2nd of July 2010. And I just wanted to touch on a matter I read in a paper last night. And it's just fascinating because I raised this issue about 6 or 7 months ago, or 8 months ago, in one of the videos. And it's kind of like you're like St. John preaching in the wilderness, you know. All of a sudden, one of the economists in this, one of the Irish papers, started talking about it last night. And I was fascinated. His name's Dan White, and he's a senior economist for a rag. It's a rag. It's called Evening Herald. And I don't particularly want to go into it, but my wife buys it because she's into crosswords. She's a big crossword fanatic, my wife. And she works in Dublin part-time, and she comes home. And when she comes home, on the way home on a bus, she buys this paper. Not all the time, but sometimes, and she does a crossword in it. So anyway, cut a long story short, I'm looking at it last night to see this article. So I've put the article up. You can have a read of it now. That's it there. Now, the only reason I say now is I can't put a link to it because when you go on their site, there is no link to it. I don't know who looks after their website, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's Evening Herald, okay? It's just fascinating. Just listen to the following. Basically what this is about international multinational companies, foreign multinational companies based in Ireland. And if you can judge how profitable they are by the difference between our GDP, and which is our gross domestic product, and our gross national product. And the difference between these two figures is very, very simple. Gross domestic product is a total output that any one country produces in 1 year. It's exactly what it says, gross domestic product. So it's the total output of a country in 1 year, one financial year. And gross national product is the amount that the country puts out, the indigenous population puts out or produces, okay? So what you have is, you've got gross domestic product, which is the totality of the country, including all the foreign and all the foreigners that are there, the wealth they produce. And then you have the gross national product, which is what the nationals in the country produce. And in Ireland's case, that would be like, the gross domestic product is what all the paddies produce plus all the multinationals all together, all rolled up into one. And then what the gross national product is just what the paddies produce on their own. Okay? And if you deduct the two, for instance, I'll give you an example. I'll put a link up to Central Statistics Office and you can have a look at it. Okay? And it tells you very, very clearly that for the first quarter of this year, which is exactly what they estimated, they did an estimate of it last year. They estimated it was going to be 168 billion, and it looks like it's going to be, because the first quarter of this year is 42 billion for our GDP, and our gross national product is 33.5 billion, which is going to make it for the whole financial year 134 billion. Now, people say to you, what are you going on about? Oh, what is all this? What relevancy is all this? It's very simple. This tells you the amount of profit that these multinationals make, and they don't leave it in Ireland. They don't put it in a bank in Ireland. They repatriate that for their own benefits. And what they do is they have an amazing relationship here in Ireland. I don't think indigenous paddy companies could do this, but they're allowed to do it. The multinationals are allowed to do it. They take the money out of Ireland and they transfer it into tax havens, the likes of Bermuda and all these offshore islands and whatever, or the tax havens all around the world, and they're allowed to do that. I don't know how it's done or whatever. To me, it's highly illegal. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it as a paddy. Oh, I'm bloody sure you couldn't, but they're allowed to do it. Anyway, so, but that's not the point. That's just an aside, really. The main point is, this year, they are going to take out of our country 34 billion. Now, why that's important is as follows. In the vast majority of countries, the difference between the GDP and the GDP and the gross national product, the GNP, is small. It's maybe 5%, at the maximum be 8%, 9%, 10%, that sort of thing. It's very, very rarely that it goes above 10%. Very rare. Okay? In Ireland, it's 25%. well, almost, not quite, but it's almost 25%. It's only over 20%. Okay. Is that right? Yeah, well, it's pushing 20%. Okay. And it's heading, it's increasing, it's not decreasing. And what that means essentially is this money, this huge volume of money, as I say, instead of being reinvested in Ireland for the benefit of the people and the country at large and our children and our grandchildren, basically the country's been raped. That's essentially what's going on. This is large-scale rape by these multinationals. Now, when I said this about 8 or 10 months ago, loads of people got on to me. Loads of people that I know who watch these things, these little video clips that I make, and they went insane, they went bananas, because several of them work for the likes of these big companies, and I don't know what the companies are, it doesn't matter. They're big pharma companies and big electronics companies, chip makers and all that. You know who they are, Intel and all that, and Pfizer, and all these people are all here, right? Anyway, when you do an analysis of these figures, however, a lot is very, very explainable. Just listen to the following fact. Now, I didn't get this from a central statistics. It took a amount of work to get this. And basically it tells you as follows. Because I had to find this out. I had to find out how many people work in these multinationals. And the only way I could get it was, I got it from a sociology department in a university. Okay? And they tell you employment in foreign-owned multinationals accounts for 9.5% of private sector employment in Ireland. Now these are 2000 figures, and I understand it's probably higher now, but it doesn't matter. We're going to work off that figure because that's a clearly defined figure, because the government don't give you these figures. There's a problem in Ireland. You can get all sorts of figures, but you can't get the key information. All right, so just remember this: 9.5% of the private sector work in these multinationals. Now, after a load more hassle, I then found out how many work in the private sector, and the total number of people who work in the private sector is 1,381,000. So if you take 9.5% of that, you end up with 131,200 people. So 131,200 Irish citizens and other citizens work in these multinationals. Okay. Now, if you take 34 billion euros and you divide it by 131,200 people, you end up with, how much do you think you end up with? You end up with a staggering sum that each one of these people produces 259,146 euros. That's €250,000 each. Yes, every single employee who works in Ireland for these multinational companies produces every year 259,146 euros. Now, I'll put a link up here and you can follow it all. I've scanned it, you can put it, because it's a bit boring. Maths is a bit boring for people and they don't believe you a lot of things. So if you want to check it out, just have a look at this, and if I'm doing something wrong, point it out to me, okay? But I don't think I am, all right? Anyway, all I'm saying to you is, how much do you think they were paid on average? On average, they were paid 40,000 a year. So that means the profit that each of them produced, the profit was around about 220,000 each of them produced. So that's the story. That's where you're coming from. That's what's going on in Ireland. Now, how it's going on politically, I don't understand. I'd love to know, because you'd never find this out, how much capital those companies put in here to be able to take that out. But I tell you one thing. I tell you one living thing. They're taking out this year 34 billion euros. They're not putting in they're not putting in a tenth of that. They're not putting in a tenth of that in capital terms. That's the world we live in. The world we live in, when I hear all about it, oh, they employ people and employ lots of people and all that. Listen, I'll tell you something. I don't know what's going on. It's probably done under Charles Haughey or some of them. I'm going to lose my temper here, so I just better be careful what I say. I would say a lot of this came about under the auspices of Haughey and his acolytes and his minions. And I'm sure if you were in the Ministry of Finance, you'd find out what the true story is. But we can't, because it's all a hidden world, that world. But it's just interesting. It gives you an insight into really what is going on. We truly are, in a financial sense, the 51st state of the USA. There's no doubt. Except we're a money laundering state. That's what's going on here. This is money laundering on a massive, massive scale. It's the only explanation for this. The only explanation. And I wonder how long it's going to be allowed. How long is the likes of Obama going to allow this to happen? And how long it's going to be allowed by the Europeans. We will talk more.